I'll call this meeting of the Planning Commission to order. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Andel, roll call, please.
Mr. Betry, Ms. Bindum, Mr. Fell, here. Mr. Fitch,
Here.
Mr. Hopkins, here. Mr. Otto, Mr. Storr, here. Mr. Trail.
Thank you. I regret to say that we do not have a quorum. We will continue with the agenda, but we will not be able to vote on any public hearings. So are there any changes to the agenda? No changes. I'll waive approval of the minutes pending a quorum. Any communications?
No.
We don't have any continued public hearings or old business. I will go ahead and open this planned case, a new public hearing. We will be happy to take testimony and discuss it as needed, and then defer a vote to the next meeting, where hopefully we will have a quorum. So with that said, I'll open planned case number 2256 PUD 15 and 2257 PUD 15. A request by Clark Lindsay Village for a preliminary and final approval of residential mixed-use planned unit development at 101 West Windsor Road in the R3 zoning district. Mr. Garcia. It doesn't sound like it's on.
Green button's on.
There it is.
Okay. Ah, there we go. Okay. All right. Thank you. So this is a request by Clark Lindsay Village for preliminary and final approval for a residential mixed-use planned unit development. This application would allow for the construction of 3 one-story residential buildings, in addition to the existing main building, which would include the installation of an indoor pool, in addition to an existing building to increase the size of the dining facility, and in addition to the existing building to increase office space. The applicant is requesting 2 waivers in this case. The first is to allow for narrower streets than are required by our subdivision ordinance, and the second is to allow parking in the required front yard setback. Now this property, if you look on Exhibit A, you'll see that the property is located on the southeast corner of Windsor Road and Race Street, and it is zoned R3, just single and 2-family residential. It's also an existing planned unit development that's had approvals in 1973 and 2013 and has been developed according to those previously approved cases. The first phase was built in 1978, and the second phase was approved in 2013 and has been mostly built out since that time. Our zoning ordinance requires planned unit developments to go through preliminary and final approval, and in general, this is done in a sequential order, first the preliminary and then the final. But since this case is essentially updating PUDs that have already been approved in the past, we are asking that they be considered concurrently. And I will point out that the same process was followed back in 2013 when the northeastern part of this site was developed with another PUD. Just a little background on this case. Clark Lindsay Retirement Village is a continuing care retirement community. And basically what that means is that they offer services based on the needs of residents at different points in their life. There's also known as aging in place. The village has over 250 residents. I think that needs to be updated. It's probably a little bit higher than that. In 132 independent living units, 19 assisted living beds, and 83 nursing beds. Some amenities they have on site are a restaurant-style dining room, recreation areas, an exercise room, a small grocery store, etc. And this PUD would add a swimming pool, and it would increase the size of the dining facility to that list of amenities. And residents of the new proposed residential units would have full access to all of those amenities as well. As I mentioned, there were previous approvals of the PUD, or of this site, in 1973. The final approval for that PUD was actually 1976. There was an approval in 1987, and the aforementioned PUD cases in 2013. Now, compared to the previous approvals, the current proposal is quite similar to the initial 1973 PUD, which included residential units in this area. The 1973 version had townhouses. These new units are slightly different than that. And the new units would provide assisted living accommodations for up to 12 individuals per house, so that'd be 36 additional units total. And they're going with a new concept of providing care in a more home-like setting than you would, or than in a traditional, what you would traditionally think of as a nursing home facility. If you look at Exhibit A, once again, you'll see that to the west and to the north are University of Illinois properties, and those are used mainly for agriculture. To the south and east is Meadowbrook Park. To the north is Stone Creek Church, and also a mostly single-family residential neighborhood. The zoning of the area, the zoning, as I mentioned earlier, it's R3. It's also zoned, it's identified as a PUD on our official zoning map as well. And then the adjacent zoning are, you've got conservation, recreation to the east and south for Meadowbrook Park. To the west, that's actually outside of the city limits. And then to the north, you have R3 residential, where the church is, and then R2 single-family residential. Pardon me. With respect to the comprehensive plan, the future land use is identified as multifamily residential. It's also identified on the future land use map, number 14, in the comp plan as Clark-Lindsay Village. So this proposal goes along with that. And for residential multifamily, the comprehensive plan states that it's primarily for apartment complexes and other multifamily buildings, which may include supporting business services for convenience needs of the residents. And it says they also should incorporate transit service and pedestrian access. And I picked those few phrases out because all of those apply to Clark-Lindsay Village and to the proposed PUD. We find that this proposal aligns with many of the goals and objectives of the comprehensive plan. I won't go through all of them here, but just to point out a few. Goal number 2 is that new development in an established neighborhood will be compatible with the overall urban design and fabric of that neighborhood. Goal number 4 is to promote a balanced and compatible mix of land uses that will help create long-term viable neighborhoods. Goal number 19 is to provide a strong housing supply to meet the needs of a diverse and growing community. Objective 20.3 is to promote compact and contiguous development of new neighborhoods along the High Cross Road, Windsor Road, and East Airport Road corridors. Objective 29.2 is to strengthen Urbana's standing as a regional healthcare center by supporting appropriately sited development opportunities. And finally, goal number 31 is to retain and expand existing businesses and industries. Exhibits D and E in your packet, or I guess D/E. Since the exhibits were the same, we combined them rather than printing them twice. If I could get to those. They show elevations of the proposed buildings. Actually, first of all, maybe I should go to exhibit the first page of exhibit D/E. Let's see if I can rotate this. Whoops. There we go. This is actually the overall site plan. So in the northwest corner, you'll see what was the original 1973 PUD development, to which this current application is asking for additions here. So these white buildings are the additions that are being proposed. And then the new residential units that are being proposed are down here in the southwest corner. And then up here in the northeast corner are the townhomes that were built as part of that 2013 PUD. So there are also elevations in here to show what the residential units would look like. Single story. I don't need to say too much about that. Access to the site. Let me go back up to that original plan. Access to the site will take place off of Race Street. So there will be a new curb cut here on the southwest corner. That's where automobiles would access, and then you'll note that there will be a new road built here, and then it will eventually connect up to Burns Drive, which was just built in the past couple of years. The initial proposal for this road was for it to be 21 feet wide with 20 feet of pavement, but the city engineer and public works staff and the fire department had some concerns, mostly to do with access for fire trucks and for ambulances to the site. So after some consultation, the applicant agreed or changed the plans to include a 25-foot wide roadway, which is still a foot smaller than is allowed by our subdivision and land use code. So that so the applicant is still has to request a street width waiver for that. But they did consult, as I mentioned, with city staff, and staff is supportive of that first waiver for the street width that is being requested. There is a second waiver that's being requested, and that is for parking in a required yard. In the R3 zoning district, we don't allow parking in a required front yard, but the applicant is requesting that we allow that, and has agreed to install a landscape buffer to screen the parking from Race Street. Since I have this overall site plan up, I'll just point out the parking would take place, or would be placed here in the southwest corner. And it would be similar to the parking that already exists, which was developed in 1978. So it would look similar. It would also have a landscape buffer, which you can see in Exhibit G. Let me go down to that really quick. And which way is north? Okay. So they would install the parking. North is to the right side. But they would install the parking, and then they would put up landscape shrubs. And if you have questions about that, the applicants are here, and they could probably answer questions about what type of shrubs and trees and such would be used for that landscape buffer. When we do allow parking in a required yard, we set a minimum of 3 feet for the buffer distance, and the buffer on this site goes from about 7.5 feet on the northern side down to just over 3 feet, about 3 feet 3 inches. So that would meet the requirements that we generally have for parking, for a parking buffer. So city staff is supportive of granting this waiver as well. Our zoning ordinance outlines 9 general goals for planned unit developments. I will not go through all of them here, but I will say that the Clark-Lindsay Village PUD is consistent with goals 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, and 9. So 7 out of the 9 goals for planned unit developments we feel that they meet. And then section 13-3 of the Urbana zoning ordinance outlines requirements for a planned unit development. And I'll try and be brief as I go through these. The first is for mixed use, and that's either in the same building or with a campus layout. And Clark-Lindsay Village PUD offers a mixture of housing types. The proposed expansion would add additional housing types, so it would increase the mix of housing types, and it's all provided in a campus setting. They have a range of residential, recreational, and low-intensity retail and personal services on site. B is conservation, and the grounds at Clark-Lindsay Village are landscaped pretty extensively. There are professionally designed gardens, and there are many mature trees on site. And this phase of the PUD would preserve the landscape areas on the site. The third is infill. And we feel that the proposal will allow for development within an urban area that is currently undeveloped, and the proposed PUD provides a development plan that is consistent with the surrounding neighborhood and will provide 36 new housing units for the community. The next is unique development. We feel that the existing PUD provides a unique residential development for seniors, and it allows them to age in place. And if this proposal is granted, it will, again, offer residents more living options in the future. With respect to our minimum development standards, this proposal meets or exceeds all of our standards for floor area ratios, setbacks, and the like. And then finally, I'll run through the criteria for approval. And the Plan Commission shall determine whether the reasons outlined in the submitted application and the evidence presented during the public hearing justify approval based on these criteria. So the first is that the proposed development is conducive to the public convenience. And we find that the proposal is conducive to the public convenience at this location, as it will expand the housing types Clark-Lindsay is able to offer the community and will take advantage of all of the existing amenities on site. Number 2 is that the proposed development will not be unreasonably injurious or detrimental to the surrounding areas or otherwise injurious or detrimental to the public welfare. We feel that the proposed development will not be injurious or detrimental to the surrounding area or the public welfare. If approved, it will have to meet city regulations regarding lighting, stormwater management, and traffic design and flow. Number 3, that the proposed development is consistent with goals, objectives, and future land uses of the Urbana Comprehensive Plan. Again, as stated earlier, it is consistent with the Comprehensive Plan. Number 4, that the proposed development is consistent with the purpose and goals of Section 13-3 of the Urbana zoning ordinance. Again, as stated earlier, it meets 7 of the 9 goals of that section. Next is that the proposed development is responsive to the relevant recommended design features identified in Table 13-2 of the Urbana zoning ordinance. Details on each of these are in your memo, but I'll just list that the following design features have been incorporated into the development plan: transition areas, lighting, street lighting, access, internal connectivity, landscape identity, tree preservation, parking, street trees, open space provision, passive and active recreation, and architectural design. Thus concludes my report, and the Plan Commission has the following options for recommendations to the City Council regarding both these cases. You can recommend approval of the development plans as submitted. You can recommend approval of the plans with any conditions that you choose, or you can recommend disapproval. Staff recommends that the Plan Commission forward both of these cases to the City Council with recommendations for approval. with the condition that construction be in general conformance with the site plan dated 5/15/2015 as attached in Exhibit E. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Garcia. Any questions for Mr. Garcia? Thank you, sir. Briefly outline the procedures for a public hearing. Staff has presented their case. The petitioner can now present their request. Proponents of the request may be heard. Opponents of the request may also be heard and can ask questions of the petitioner through me. Others may also be heard. City staff may clarify things or respond to new evidence. Petitioner then may rebut but not introduce new evidence. Opponents may rebut but not introduce new evidence. Petitioner will summarize their case, and then we'll close the public input portion and go into discussion. Tonight we cannot vote because we don't have a quorum. So if the petitioner would like to approach, if you have anything to say to us. And if you just state your name for the record.
I'm Deb Rudens, and I'm the president of Clark Lindsay Village. I want to thank you for your attention and interest in our projects tonight. I just want to be able to convey how important these projects are to Clark Lindsay and to the community. We have a mission of enhancing the well-being of older adults through wellness, engagement, and community. And these projects each take us a step towards meeting that goal and mission. First, the pool project, which includes fitness areas and expanded therapy, is a very clear connection to our commitment to wellness of older adults. And we're very excited about this project. It's been planned for decades now, so we're excited to be able to move forward and bring that to our community. And the small houses, which will be the homes built to house our elders, are a very exciting part of our mission as well. It is a new model that is being introduced throughout the nation, but will be the first in Illinois outside of federal land to be part of the greenhouse project. And not to be confused with places to grow plants, but greenhouse is a word we use to represent that it is a home where our elders will thrive. And not a home-like environment, but real home in meaningful lives. And we are excited to work with the Greenhouse Project and our experienced team who has had the opportunity to build these in other states and bring that to Illinois as well. And those projects particularly will enhance the offerings here on the Clark Lindsay campus, and we hope will set an example throughout the cities and throughout the state of Illinois. Very excited. I'd like to introduce my team here today. We have our project architect Ramu Ramachandran from Perkins Eastman. He and Rick Sinnott from Erickson Engineering were part of our team to bring the Villa projects, which are just wrapping up now, and did a wonderful job. We also have our Director of Environmental Services, Fred Lux, and our landscape architect, Brian Johns, here as well. And each of these gentlemen have been an integral part of the planning for this project. So,
Great, thank you very much. Any questions for Ms. Reardon? No, thank you.
thank you.
Any other proponents of the request care to address the Plan Commission? Or any opponents? Anyone else care to address the Plan Commission on this case? Hearing nothing, I will close the public input portion of this, and we will discuss if anybody has anything that they'd like to speak to. Otherwise, we will continue it to the next meeting, and hopefully have a quorum and be able to make a decision. We're good? Looks like we're good. All right. Well, thank you. Then we'll continue this to the next Plan Commission meeting. We don't have any new business. Audience participation. Does anybody care to speak to the Plan Commission on something germane to planning? Staff report. I do have a question. I got a Creekway permit request in the mail. I can't recall if that requires us to do anything or if it's just notificational.
It must be notification because can you give me the address of that one so I can confirm? Because there is a potential waiver that might be needed on one, but I don't think you have that one yet.
106 South Lincoln, it's the mosque, the CIMIC.
Ah, that's for notification. Thank
Okay,
you.
great. Thank you for clarifying that. We don't have a study session tonight, therefore, we're adjourned.